Alrighty, athletes, really excited to have you here because I want to share with you something that I've been working on for quite some time, and it's AA40 Health. All right, and if you're with me here today, you're a guy over the age of 40, and you're interested in living a healthful life, right? And not just healthy in terms of going to the doctor and having great numbers, but you also want to be a high performance guy. You enjoy doing active things. You understand that being physically capable, like having these physical capabilities of your body, is something that's really, really important to your overall health and well-being. And what a lot of systems do today is they don't factor in human performance when they're talking about health, right? So when you go to the doctor, you have biomarkers done, and you'll get a bunch of blood work, and they'll do like blood pressure and things like that, heart rate, and you'll get all these numbers, and then they'll just say, well, you're either normal or you're abnormal. And if you're abnormal, means something is a little bit off, and maybe you've got to make some changes, whether it be medication or lifestyle changes, whatever, in order to get you back to normal. But that's the only thing we're looking at when it comes to health. And that's always kind of drove me crazy, especially for guys who don't want to just settle for like normal, and who also want to live, who also believe, like I do, that health is more than just numbers from a doctor. Your health is directly correlated with your body's physical capacities. And if you have no physical capacities, that's a huge deterrent to the health of your system. In other words, you could have really good biomarkers from your doctor, yet you could have low energy, low stamina. You could be prone to injury because your muscles are so weak because you just don't train them. There's a lot of things that all those biomarkers from your doctor really just don't look at. Right. So if you get great biomarkers and you're throwing out your back every 5 minutes because you try to pick up your kid from the floor, or you're trying to clean the garage and you throw out your back, like that's a massive problem, right? It's a massive, massive problem. And I would even argue that your body's physical performance tells more about your overall health and well-being than your biomarkers do, right? I would never give up my performance for better biomarkers. But here's the cool thing, is the two things they work together, right? There's a correlation, because the highest performers in the world generally have the best biomarkers as well, right? So being a higher performer physically will lend itself well to optimizing your biomarkers at the doctor. So if you ever wanted to know, like, how do I get better cholesterol numbers? How do I reverse prediabetes? How do I get optimize my blood pressure? How do I get my testosterone levels to raise up? The answer is improve the performance of your body. Like, hands down, when you improve the performance, the physical performance of your body, it positively affects everything. Everything in your body gets better when you improve your physical performance, right? And this is why I want to share this with you. What I've got here is the right side, which are biomarkers, and then the left side, which is performance. We already have a bunch of like normal levels for biomarkers, right? Because people have been going to the doctor and getting physicals forever, so we kind of have these numbers, right? And I've got the normal sort of numbers for a bunch of different markers here, right? And I just pulled a few that I think are important that you may want to take a look at. Again, it's a small sampling. You can get much, much deeper with these things, but I think these are probably the most telling of your health on that front as of right now. And these are usually included in most blood panels that you would get done at a routine physical, right? So you can see in the yellow, those are the normal ranges. And then AA40 is athletic after 40. So the guys that I work with who are all over 40, these are the numbers that we generally see with people that share these numbers with me. And just for full disclosure here, not everybody shares their numbers, but generally these are the numbers that we're looking for, right? And I consider the green area to be optimized, right? They're better than normal. And we want to be better than normal. But how do we get those AA40 numbers into the better than normal? Like, we're not intentionally trying to bring down cortisol levels. I mean, we are sort of, but it's more indirectly. What we're really doing is we're trying to improve the performance of that human. And in AA40, we're really good at improving performance, physical capacities. That's what I've done for many, many years, right? So what are some standards that we need to hit as far as human performance? And nobody's really come up with this, which drives me nuts, right? I don't understand why we don't have the same sort of set of standards for guys specifically over 40 around strength, power, conditioning, like we do with biomarkers. right? And what I did is I went online and I tried to figure out what is kind of normal for some of these different exercises. So if you look on the left here, you can see on the left I've got in the blue section strength, power, and conditioning. The strategy that we use in AA40 is the first thing we always want to do is develop someone's just full body overall strength. And then we want to add in some power. Power is just a combination of strength and speed, but we need to have a base level of strength before we add in any sort of power. And then conditioning is just like, how well does your cardiorespiratory system work? Okay. And I use what I've done is I've pulled a few exercises, a few tests here that I think carry over very well to everyday life, because that's what we're really training for as guys over 40. When we're trying to improve the performance of our body, we're really trying to optimize our performance for everyday life, right? We're playing the sport of life, and even if you play some other sport, we want to be ready for anything. And that's what we're trying to enhance with performance. So very different than like bodybuilding. I don't care how much you bicep curl. I don't care how much you bench press, because laying on your back and pushing weight is not really that valuable for everyday life. These are things that are going to lend themselves very well to everyday life. So here's the normal, okay? And again, I did some research. It's very hard to find these because quite honestly, most guys don't do any physical training. From what I can find in my research, most guys don't do any sort of structural physical strength and conditioning, right? So it's very hard to get normal. So what I did is I did some research, read some things, but I also used just my knowledge and experience from over the last 25 years of being in the strength conditioning world, working with probably thousands of people of all different walks of life, right? So normal for guys over 40 to deadlift, basically think of this as just picking something up from the floor. Most guys can pick up about 150 pounds, okay? And it just means like push comes to shove, if you needed to, an adult male of any size or weight can pick up 150 pounds. Okay, this is just average, all right? So there's gonna be, of course, people above, there's gonna be people below, so it's about average. Most people can squat 75 pounds, meaning if you're holding on to 75 pounds, you can squat down, stand back up. Most guys, again, push comes to shove, can do that. Okay, standing shoulder presses, which just means pushing weight up over your head. Most guys can push at least 50 pounds, okay? Pull-ups, most guys can't do a pull-up, which I think is very sad, because I think we need to have that as a standard in our life. If you can't do a pull-up, it would kind of be like having your blood pressure at 140/90. You don't want to be in that place. So when you look at the AA40 numbers, the green numbers, this is sort of on average where our athletes, and I call my clients athletes, this is where they're sitting on an average. Again, there's people above, there's people below, right? So these are the averages. So 250-pound deadlift, back squat of 185, standing shoulder press, they can push 100 pounds over their head. Pull-ups, they can do 6 pull-ups, right? So that would be considered a more healthful person, right? When you've got those kinds of numbers. And those green numbers in the performance markers lend themselves very well to the green markers over in the biomarkers, right? So these people tend to have like an HbA1c of less than 5.4. These people tend to have less cortisol. These people tend to have a lower ApoB. ApoB is basically just like looking at the it's a cholesterol marker, looking at a lot of the LDL particles. Homeocysteine, which is a measurement of cardiovascular disease risk. So they're somewhere in the 12 millimolars per liter range. Triglycerides, and I don't want to go through all these things, but you get the idea, right? So we want the green from the performance metrics correlate well to the green in the biomarkers. All right. So let's keep moving down. So then we got power, and I've got certain numbers here. Most people have never trained power. Most guys, that's why I've got NAs there, which is unfortunate, because sometimes in life, not only do we need to be strong, but we also need to be fast. We need both of those things, right? So we want to build things like the push press, like the clean, like the snatch. And if those words sort of freak you out a little bit, that's okay. They should, because it's not an easy thing, but neither is the sport of life. And if you practice these things in the lab, and I call the gym the lab, then you're much less likely to hurt yourself or to be affected when you've got to be a little bit explosive in your everyday life. When you're practicing in the lab, you're not going to hurt yourself in life, right? So you want to learn these things, develop these things. It requires a tremendous amount of balance, coordination, stability, strength, speed, agility, like all these things have to come into play when you're practicing these things. And there's a right way and a wrong way to develop these things. And that's what we do in AA40 is we teach you exactly how to build these numbers in a safe and efficient way, right? And then we've got conditioning, right? So 1 mile distance, 50 burpees. I find that those are two really good markers to know how well your cardiorespiratory system is working. And there's a physician that I follow who's been all over podcasts lately. He wrote a book called Outlive. His name is Dr. Peter Attia. Brilliant individual. He's been a huge influence on me over the years. But he says, one thing that he likes to do with his patients is test their VO2 max. That's how he tests conditioning. And I'm like, well, VO2 max is great, but that's more of like a biomarker in my mind. What's more important is what is your actual physical capacity? I'm not so interested in you sitting on a bike and doing a VO2 max test. What I'm interested in is like real world application. How long does it take you to cover a mile distance? Because as humans, that's one of the fundamental things that we need to be able to do is to cover distance, right? And the better our conditioning is, the faster we're going to be able to cover distance. Just the more efficient our body is, right? 50 burpees, laying on the floor and standing back up multiple times is a tremendous challenge to the entire body, not just cardiorespiratory, but also the flexibility, the strength, the power, the speed, the coordination. There's so much that goes into a burpee, and it lends itself very, very well to everyday life. Because if you think about it, as we get older, one of the things that disappears is our ability to get on the floor and stand back up. In fact, a lot of guys over 40, they just avoid it completely. And maybe not in 40s, 50s, but when we get into 60s, 70s, 80s, they don't even get on the floor because they're afraid they're not going to be able to get up. Imagine if you could do 50 burpees in 4.5 minutes, right? You're hedging yourself away from this thing that happens as we get older. You're hedging yourself against aging. You're pushing yourself away from the zero line, right? So 12 minutes is normal. 10 minutes is normal for a mile distance. AA40 guys, 7:30, 4:30. The green performance markers lend themselves very well to the green biomarkers. So how do you optimize your biomarkers? How do you get out of normal and into, I call it athlete, right? You have to build the performance of your system, right? So that's what we chase. It's one of our primary goals in Athletic After 40 is to improve your performance, to teach you how to do these things and to optimize those numbers so that everything else in your life gets better, right? When you're in better shape, what doesn't improve? Like everything is better. You feel better. You have more confidence. Like there's subjective and objective things that happen that are just too good to, the list is exhaustive, right? How much better would you feel if you're in great shape? How much better would you feel if you had these AA40 numbers, right? So again, we're primarily focusing on performance, but there's different strategies that go into this. You might be thinking, well, I just got to spend a bunch of time in the gym, which is not the case. We want to keep things simple. We want to develop the things that are going to deliver the most bang for the buck. And these are the things that I've sort of listed here. There's other things we can add in based on the person, but there's other things underlying performance too. So what affects your performance? Well, if you look down into the orange, there's 5 ways to improve physical performance is eat quality food. Like we have to look at your nutrition as well. Because if you're just going to the gym every day, or you're just hitting the pavement every day and running, but your diet is crap, you're never going to be able to hit this 7:30 mile, right? Maybe you will, but you're going to be limited. You're putting a hard ceiling on your physical capacity when you eat bad food, right? It's going to affect your physiology in a negative way, and then that shows up in your performance, right? If I have an athlete, an elite level athlete, and I start feeding them a bunch of crappy food, what's going to happen to their performance? It's going to decline, right? So if we really want to be a high performer, and again, that correlates into good biomarkers, we're looking at the overall health picture, we've also got to eat quality food, right? We have a very specific way that we approach nutrition in Athletic After 40 so that we can get those performance markers way up. We need to optimize sleep because obviously performance, again, is affected by your sleep. If you don't sleep well at night and your energy levels are tanked, you're more likely to eat bad foods. You're more likely to have a negative attitude. You're more likely to not want to go to the gym and exercise, right? It's kind of a normal thing. Human physiology, when you're tired, your body wants to conserve energy. It doesn't want to expend energy. So it's going to fight you to go to the gym. And only the people with the biggest willpower are going to be able to make it, right? So we need to optimize sleep. We need to think positively about your health and well-being. If you're very negative, you don't enjoy your life, you're sort of on a fast track to get out of this life, then none of this stuff is really going to work for you, right? So you have to think positively about your health and your well-being. You have to legitimately want to, I believe, you have to legitimately want to be here. You have to legitimately want to continue pursuing this thing that is life, because life is amazing. It's a miracle. So you have to think positively about yourself. You have to manage your stress levels appropriately. Granted, there's always going to be stress in your life, but there's different things that might come up where you may need some stress management tactics to be able to manage that appropriately. Because again, if you're super stressed out, it affects your performance markers, it affects your biomarkers. And then spending time each week building your performance. So there is this element of you have to go to the lab, and I call the gym the lab, right? And I think if you reframe it that way, it might be a little bit more appealing to people who don't like the gym, right? Because when you think of a gym, what do you think about? You think about a bunch of like douchebag, big dudes who are all young and ripped, and they've all got attitudes. Like, there's so many negative connotations to the word gym, and maybe that's not what you think, but if you do, I find it's much better just to think of it as the lab. Like, you have to go and spend some time in the lab working on yourself, right? And playing and testing and trying new things and working on your mobility and your balance and your coordination, all in an effort to continuously improve your performance, right? We want you to get better as you get older. We don't want you to decline as you get older. And if we see your performance metrics getting better over time, there's a good chance that your biomarkers are getting better as well, right? Again, there's that correlation there, which is it's a beautiful correlation. So here's the thing. If you want to live the most healthful life that you possibly can, if you enjoy this life, and if you're willing to put in some work and to make yourself a priority and make this all a priority so you can live a great life, then really focus on performance. What are the decisions and the choices that you're making on a day-to-day basis going to improve or decline your performance? And then we can just take that up one more level. If the choices you're making in your day are not improving your performance, then it's negatively affecting your health. And that's really the most important thing, right? Because when you lose your health, it's the worst place to be. I've been there, and it's the worst place to be. So do everything you can to live the most healthful life. How do you become a super healthy person? Really focus on your performance, and everything else kind of follows along. Push yourself, challenge yourself. You are capable of way more than what you might think. And, again, if you're looking at these numbers and you're thinking, I could never do that, that's a problem. And you can do it. You just need to find the right approach. That's really important. But also believe in yourself and know that you're capable of possibly way more than you ever thought you would, that you were. And if this is new to you, it can be a little bit scary, but I'll tell you what, it's one of the best journeys you can go on, because it's all centered around just self-improvement. And anytime you can improve yourself, it not only improves you, it improves all of the people around you. So anyways, if you'd like some help on any of this, let me know. Just shoot me a message in Messenger. I do work with clients very closely on developing these performance skills. And we look at nutrition and sleep and all these things just to constantly kind of push these performance numbers so that you can live your most healthful life. So look, if you'd like some help, you don't want to do this on your own. You want a proven path. That's what we do. That's what I've done. It's what I've designed in Athletic After 40. And if you want someone to kind of walk you down this road, that's what we can certainly help you with. So just hit me up, and I hope you have an amazing, amazing day.